Hi, George here. These are the top 10 things that Photoshop Elements beginners need to know. Plus, I toss in two more bonus things at the end of this video. And watch clear through because I'll be putting in a lot of little tips and tricks as we go throughout these top 10. Okay, top 10 thing number one, how do you open up Photoshop Elements Editor? The first thing you'll see when you open up Photoshop Elements is the home screen, and that's right here. And here's the button for launching the Photoshop Elements Editor. And that's what we normally talk about when we're referring to Photoshop Elements. It's the editor program right here. Now, to the right of this is a link for Premiere Elements if you happen to purchase that program as well. And to the left is the link for the Photoshop Elements Organizer. And the organizer works both with Photoshop Elements and Premiere Elements. So technique number one is just to click on this. This will then launch Photoshop Elements, just like that. Okay, technique number two is to launch the organizer and then launch Photoshop Elements from the organizer. Let's see that. Okay, here we are in the organizer. In a couple ways here to open a picture up over into the editor. Click on a picture like this, right click, and you can then edit with Photoshop Elements Editor right here. That's one way. Or click on a picture, go up to Edit, come down to Edit with Photoshop Elements Editor right here, or use the Control-I keyboard shortcut. Any of those will then open up that image over inside of the Elements Editor. And we'll see that right now. Now, normally when you open up a picture like this into the editor, it'll be coming in here in expert mode. We have these three ways of working inside the editor. The quick mode right here, which has a limited tool set and some real easy adjustments over here right-hand side. Great way to come in and work if you're brand new to Photoshop Elements. The second one is guided edits, which allows you to do some real fancy stuff. And Photoshop Elements helps to walk you through that process. And then finally, the expert mode, which is where I do almost all of my work. And this gives you the full access to all of the tools, all the menu options, and so forth in here for Photoshop Elements. Here's top 10 tip number two, how to open an image if you're inside of the editor. Okay, the first thing to do, the easiest one is just to go over here to File and Open right here. That brings up a standard file window. Simply navigate to where your image is located and then choose an image to open that up. I'll just choose this one right here. Choose Open. And there we go. It comes in here as a new image. Notice that we have three images now. First one right here. Here's our second one. Here's a third one. You can go between those just by clicking on these tabs. Or down here in the photo bin, you can go between them just by clicking on the image in the photo bin right down there. Now, a quick bonus tip. You want to make this as easy as possible. And having Photoshop Elements set up for floating windows just like that is a real nice trick. Let me show you this one. Go up here to Edit, come down to Preferences and General. And right here, make sure that this checkbox is checked. Allow floating documents in expert mode. Check that, choose OK. You can then float your windows or dock them back up on the tab bar up here. So real easy, very useful for a lot of reasons when you're working with multiple files. Top 10 tip number three in the Photoshop Elements program. Over on the right-hand side, we have the Layers panel being shown right now. You'll find that right at the bottom right down here. There's Layers, Effects, Filters, Styles, Graphics, and more. First one is Layers, or go up to the window menu and you'll find Layers right here, or hit the F11 key to bring up your layers. And then Layers allows you to add multiple layers into your project. And this is where the real power of working with Photoshop Elements comes in, is the ability to work with and use layers. For instance, right now we have the first layer is the background layer. This one is locked for transparency over here. And that's standard. Let's say you wanted to work on a copy of this. Oftentimes you want to erase stuff, things like that. You don't want to damage your original. I always recommend doing this. Right click on the name of the layer. In this case, it says background, and choose duplicate layer. Choose OK. We now have a copy of that layer in here. So I can now hide that background layer. Click on this eye to show or hide a layer. That hides that background. This is now my safety. I don't need to touch this again. In case I mess up on my editing, I can always go back to my saved clean version right there. Real great trick. There are several ways of getting additional layers in here. If you want just a clean blank layer, click on the new layer button right there. There's a clean blank layer. Sometimes if you add something in, it will come in as a new layer. For instance, if I go over here, click on the text tool, and I'll just type in some type just like that. There we go. That comes in as a new layer. In this case, it's a type layer, different kind of layer. And we can, again, show or hide that. And notice because it's on its own layer, I can move this thing around anywhere I want to without moving or changing the background layer. So you can see the power of working with layers in here. Text layers are a specific kind of layer, and it's limited to some of the things you can do. For instance, I can't paint on a text layer. I can change the text color. I can change what it says, but I can't paint on it. Let's say I wanted to do some painting on this, you can do that by changing this layer to a different kind of layer. Now, whenever I do that, especially with a type layer, I'm going to right click on this, duplicate the layer, choose OK. That gives me my type safety layer. I'll hide that one. And now on my new copy, right click on the name and come down here to simplify layer. This changes the layer from being a text layer into just a graphics layer. Let's take the zoom tool right here at the top. I'm going to zoom in on just that part of our picture. Let's say I wanted to put a gradient just into the type itself. You can do that. Now that it has been changed to a regular image layer, I can paint right on top of this. Now, if I wanted just the type, hold the Control key down and click on the thumbnail over here, and that selects just that type. That's one way of making a selection. Now, a selection protects everything outside the selection and allows you to work inside the selection. So I'll do a real easy one here. I'll grab my gradient tool right here, come down, there's my gradient, and that's just a linear gradient. I'll now go up here above and just drag straight down and let go. And that puts a gradient inside of that area. Make it real short here, get a brighter gradient. There it is, even like that. So that's how you can paint onto text by converting it into a different kind of layer. Okay, let's go back to Fit Screen. Click on the Zoom tool, Fit Screen. Use the Control-D keyboard shortcut to deselect any selection. And there we go. So another kind of layer in here. If I hide that layer, here's the original type layer hidden underneath. And there's our new one that we did on top. And these are separate layers, so I can move them like that and work with them independently. Another kind of layer is a shape layer, a graphic shape layer. Go over here to our shapes. I'll grab something fancy over here. Let's just do butterfly shape. That's fine. And click and drag. And that makes a shape on the page. And notice how this comes in as a different kind of layer. This is a smart object layer. That's what the little icon is right down here at the bottom right-hand corner. This is a vector graphic as opposed to being what's called a rasterized graphic or your standard photo kind of graphic. With the vector graphic, it doesn't matter how much I enlarge this, it's always going to have clean edges. Now notice that there's a box around this, and the box has handles on it. You can see one right down here, up your right-hand corner. One's in the middle. You can grab those handles and then pull those in or out and change the size of your object. If you pull from the middle of a side, you can change the width or the height of your object just like that. And down here, there's a little handle right here. You can grab that and you can rotate your object right there. And notice whenever I make a change, I get this little icon down here, green check mark, and a cancel image. To finish off this one adjustment, just click on that green check mark. It then sets that in place. Notice how the box has now changed. It's now rectangle again, straight up and down. Let's say I didn't want to do that. I can undo that with the keyboard shortcut Control-Z, or up here to edit and undo. There's the undo move, and then edit, undo free transform layer. So you can go backwards and forwards right here using the Control-Z, or you can use a Control-Y keyboard shortcut to redo steps. You work back and forth through several steps that way. Top 10 tip number 4 is adding a picture into an existing project, and it's easy to do. A couple ways. I could go over here, just bring up a picture like this. Here's where having floating windows really comes in handy. I can grab my tab here, pull that down, and float this window. Now I can just go over here and grab the background layer from this picture and drag it onto that picture, just like that. And I'll put this back up here again. And that then comes in as a new layer. And just like before, I can float this layer anywhere I want to and do whatever I want to on that individual layer, or show or hide. Another way, come down to the photo bin again, and you need to do this one kind of quickly, is to click and drag like that. It will then take that image and put it into your current project as a new layer right here. Notice that this time it comes in with a little icon down here. This now has come in as a smart object layer, which has its limitations. One of those is that you can't change pixels on this layer, kind of like a text layer. So if I wanted to be able to paint on this or apply filters, I'll have to rasterize this layer, just like we did with the type. Right click on the name over here and simplify layer. And there we go. Once that icon is gone, that means that we can now work with this layer just as a regular text layer. Notice here that this layer is below the butterfly layer, and it's underneath the butterfly layer here in our project. So layers on top are going to be showing in the front. Layers at the bottom show in the back. So you have a stack over here on the right-hand side, kind of like a stack of cards, with your top layer up here showing on top or in front of everything else. And as you move down, each one of these layers again is showing in front of anything that's lower than it and in behind anything that's above it on the layer stack. Another way to bring in a photo is to go over here to the File menu, come down to Place, find a picture. Let's just grab this butterfly right here, choose Place, and that places that image into your current project as a new layer over here. Notice we have a check mark. Click the check mark, and there we go. It's now been placed into this picture, and like everything else, it's a layer. I can move it around, do whatever I want to this. And once again, it's a little hard to see on this photo thumbnail, but this comes in as a smart object layer again. So if I wanted to paint on this, I would have to change that. Okay, here's number 5 of the top 10 Photoshop Elements things beginners need to know. And that's how to adjust an image once you have it inside the program. Now, this works with individual layers, or you can do a different kind of adjustment that will work on everything in your image. Bring this down a little bit so we can see several layers. Come in here, hit that check mark because we changed the size. I'll hide this butterfly, and we'll move this image over here. There we go, 3 images. We'll start off by working at this top image right here, and you can make adjustments up here under the Enhance menu. There are auto adjustments up here. I personally don't like these because they don't give you controls, although you get a little bit of control with the Auto Smart Fix and then the Adjust Smart Fix option right down here. But pretty much, these are one-shot deals, and you don't have any way of adjusting that one-shot deal. So I prefer coming down here and using the Adjust Color options, Color Cast, Hue Saturation, Remove Color, Replace Color, and so forth, and the Adjust Lighting, which is Shadow Highlights, Brightness, Contrast, and Levels, with Levels being my personal favorite control here. There are more things down below: Convert to Black and White, Colorize Photos, Shake Reduction, stuff like that. But your main ones are right here in these 2. Now these work directly on the layer that you're working on, so it's a destructive kind of an adjustment. Now this won't work on a smart object layer like our butterfly right down here. Let's take a look at this. So I want to come in here and just adjust the levels, which is your contrast settings. Notice that you can't do that on a smart object layer. Come down here to the fitness layer. That's this picture. This is a regular image layer. So Enhance, come down to Lighting and Levels. And here we go. There's the levels control. I can adjust the levels on a regular layer. With this one control, it's easy. You just adjust your black point and your white point with these 2 side slider controls in here. Darken down the dark parts, the black parts of the image. I can brighten up the white parts of the image, and I can adjust the midtone position with this midtone slider control and improve the look of the image that way. Basically a contrast adjustment. And click on Cancel if you don't want to keep that. Now, if you want to do those adjustments here on a smart object layer, there are 2 ways. One way is to convert this to a regular layer. And whenever you do that, I always recommend right-clicking and duplicating the layer. Choose OK, and then work on the duplicate. That gives you this layer as a safety. Right-click on the name, simplify layer, and now you can apply adjustments onto this layer. The second way to do this is to not apply adjustments onto the layer and instead do this as a safe technique. And then we'll work on these smart object layers, just like this one right down here. And that's to use an adjustment layer. That's up here. Layer, come down to New Adjustment Layer. And in here we can do Levels, Brightness, Contrast, Hue Saturation, Gradient Map, Photo Filter, Invert, Threshold, and Posterize. All of these can come in as adjustment layers, which sit on top of your other layer. And you see the adjustments through that. Let's take a look at that. Go up here to Levels. Now there's one option here when you first start up, and that is to use the previous layer to create a clipping mask, which means that this will only be applied to just that one layer. If you check that, or if you don't check that, it will apply to everything. Make sure this first applying just to the one layer. Choose OK. Here we go. Now notice how this comes in as a new layer up here. This is an adjustment layer. The adjustment tool's right here. If I close this down, I can always bring it back up again. This is one of the advantages on this. You can go back and you can change your adjustments later on by double-clicking on the thumbnail, and it brings the control back up again. And then if we watch the butterfly over here, I can adjust the values with the slider controls, just like I did on that fitness picture. And that, again, is on the Smart Object layer, but I can adjust it here with this kind of an adjustment layer. Close that down. Let's say I'm not happy with that adjustment. I can either hide that adjustment right there, or double-click on the thumbnail and bring it back up again. And if I wanted to adjust everything in here, I'll hide that. Let's say I wanted to adjust the whole picture. I can do that with an adjustment layer. Let's go up here to the top layer. And adjustment layers work on anything below the position of that adjustment layer. So Layer, New Adjustment Layer. Let's come down to a color adjustment here, Hue Saturation. Same thing. This time I'm not going to check that checkbox. Choose OK. It's now going to apply the control here on everything underneath that layer. So if I change the hue, which is the coloration in here, notice how the color changes on all of those layers. So those are the two ways of working with these adjustment layers, either with everything underneath the adjustment layer, and this can be any place in here if you wanted to, or working with just that one particular layer right beneath. You can also do some walkthrough adjustments up here with the guided edits. Click on that tab, and we have basics, color, and black and white. All of these allow you to do some basic things such as enhance color over here, remove a color cast, do a saturated look. On the basics, we have correct skin tone, brightness, contrast right here, or we can use the quick edit mode over here. But for that, that works only on an individual layer. So I'm just going to hide all of this stuff, and let's hide that one. And I'll come down and select this layer as a layer we're working on. Then click on quick, and we now can use our limited tool set left-hand side, and we have our adjustments available right-hand side. Here's the smart fix. Again, I don't tend to like these smart things. I think you get better effects by doing them separately: exposure, lighting, color, and balance, and sharpen right down here. On this one, here's our lighting control, and you just roll over these samples to see how it looks. You find one you like, and then you click on that. Or if we go to color change here, again, you can roll over this and get different color settings. The first one here is for saturation. 3 tabs on this. Here's a hue adjustment, and here's a vibrance adjustment. So very easy to do. When you find one you like, you just click on that, and it then sets that in place. Okay, here is tip number 6 in the top 10 things that beginning Photoshop Elements users need to know, and that's how to work with layer masks. I'll be doing a fancier layer mask trick here as the final bonus tip at the end of the video, so make sure you stick around for that. But here's the basics on this. Let's just bring up this image right here, our butterfly image, and it's sitting on a layer. As you can see, and it's transparent around the outside of the layer. Now, maybe I want to paint on this thing and just paint inside of here without getting anything outside. Right now, if I go over here and choose a color, let's just choose a bright red so it's easy to see. And I'll grab my paintbrush right here. Now if I paint on this, notice how it paints over the transparent area and over the image. I'll use the Control-Z keyboard shortcut to undo out of that. Now the way you can fix that is by doing a layer mask. Layer masks work by protecting everything outside of a selection. Let's make an easy selection on this. The easiest way to do this kind of a selection where it's floating on a layer is to hold the Control key down and click on the thumbnail for that layer. And there's our selection. You can see that in there. Now go up here to the layer mask button right here, click on that, and it makes a layer mask. You can see it right over here. And notice that there's a little link in here. The layer mask is linked to this image. Double click on the image side. There we are. So there's 2 sides here, image side and layer mask side. Look for the light blue outline to see which side you're on. And let's come down here. I'll grab that same red and paintbrush, and I'll paint over that. And notice now that what is outside of that is being protected by that layer mask, so I can safely paint inside of this without damaging anything outside of that area. Now the layer mask is locked. If I move the image around, the layer mask moves with the image, so it protects everything outside of that. Now I could reverse that layer mask. Over to the layer mask here, click on that, look for the light blue outline, and then go up here to Filter, come down to Adjustments, and Invert. Notice how that reverses itself. It's now hiding what's inside that area, in which case it's hiding that image. But I can go back to the image side, double click, take my paintbrush, I can paint in here, and it's only going to be painting outside of that protected area. Again, the layer mask allows me to do that. There we go. Let's now go back to the layer mask side, double click on that, back up to Filter, come back to Adjustments, and Invert. And then that shows what's inside, and notice we're now seeing the painting inside and not the painting outside. So you can choose what you want to show in here. Notice that the actual layer over here, I'm painting on both inside and outside, but what I'm seeing is controlled by the layer mask. Okay, here is number 7 in the top 10 things you need to know as a Photoshop Elements beginner, and that's how to apply filters. Now filters apply onto individual layers. So if I wanted to work on this layer here, choose your layer, go up here to Filter, and you have these filter sets in here, everything from adjustments all the way down to texture and others. Plus at the very top up here, the top list, this is the last filter that you applied. And below that is the filter gallery, which has several filters in it. Several things in here are shown inside of the filter gallery. And there's one more way to use filters, and that's down here, bottom right-hand corner. There's a button here. And it changes this over to the filters panel, which might be the easiest way to work if you're brand new to Photoshop Elements. Here's all of your main filter sets. This isn't all of the filters, but most of them are in here. Let's say I wanted to come in here and do something fancy like a render in here. There's a difference cloud thing. You can undo that, or come in here and do an artistic filter. Let's do a palette knife effect on this. There's a palette knife effect. I can make my adjustments right down here. We can back out of this by clicking on this cancel button. There we go. So very easy to apply filters. Personally, I tend to always do my filters up here with the filter menu. For me, it's just easier. And I'll normally go here to the filter gallery first. Same idea as we just saw over there. We have thumbnail examples in here, but we have a bit better control on these. Let's say go up here to the artistic section, and we can do a palette knife look right here. Same thing we just did over there. And here's our controls. You can look at these either as thumbnails in here in these little drop-down lists, or you can look at the filters alphabetically right-hand side over here, little drop-down list right there. Other filters up here in the filter set are the adjustments, and the main one in here is going to be invert. We have the blur section in here. The main blur tool is the Gaussian blur tool right here. We have the noise. Here's where you can work on dust and scratches, things like that. And there's some render options in here, clouds, difference clouds, fibers, lens flare. And there's another option down below here with some interesting effects as well. There's also this camera distortion, which is very interesting. If you have a specific camera that can come in and try to adjust for any distortion caused by a lens, wide angle adjustments, things like that. And a fun trick in here is to use the vignette control. You can actually darken down and give yourself a vignette just like that. Here's number 8 in our top 10 list of things that beginners should know about Photoshop Elements. And that's down here. There is a graphics panel right here. Click on that. Now in here, there are several things you can look at. First off, it's set up by type normally. You could do by activity, color, event, and so forth. I always leave mine at by type. We can then look at backgrounds, frames, graphics, shapes, and text. All things you can add in here. Basically, it's included clip art that comes with Photoshop Elements. Now, all of this isn't actually loaded on your computer when you install the program. A lot of it is kept up on Adobe's servers, and all you have to do is just to use it to bring it into the program. You see those with the little blue triangle here. All you need to do there is just to double click, will then load that in. Let me show you how these things work. I'm first going to go back to the layers panel again here, and I'll bring up that fitness layer here, and we'll hide this. So we now have an image sitting on top, and we have a clear background. Your background layer is right down here. Now, if you're changing the background, be aware that it's going to change this layer right there. So if you don't want that to happen, make a duplicate of your background, so you get a background copy, and it gives you that as a safety. We already have that done, so we're fine there. I'll just go back here to graphics. Here's an image. I haven't used this before, so it's not been downloaded yet. It's a Christmas pattern, and it has this little blue triangle. Just double click on that. It then downloads that from Adobe, and then it's now on my system. Notice that the blue triangle has gone away. I now have this available on my system whenever I want to use it. To use one that I already have, just click on the image over here. That one's already been downloaded. There we go. And it's easy to go through here and just try different backgrounds. Let's go back to the layers again, and you'll see how the background layer has been changed to that new layer. If you want to get a few backgrounds to choose between, an easy way to do that is to take this background layer and, just like we did up here with this, right-click where it says background, duplicate that layer, choose OK. I now have that saved as a regular layer. Let's now go back to graphics, and I'll choose something else. Let's choose this blue one up here. There we go. And go back to layers again, and it changed that background to this look. See, I want to do that one more time. Right-click on that, duplicate layer, choose OK. Back to our graphics again. I haven't done this one before. Let's see how this looks. Now I'm still seeing the other layer in there. Back to our layers, let's hide that layer, and there's this new background. Now the graphics don't have just these backgrounds. We also have frames in here. You can apply frames to your picture. Let's apply this one right here. There we go. It applies that frame to my image. Now this is sitting on top of the other one, so I can click here to add a photo. Just grab this one right there. Choose place. It then places that photo inside the frame. I can then move that around in here. I can adjust the size with my slider control up here. I can rotate left or right up here. And I can choose a different picture right there to put inside that frame. Now these come in as little layer sets. Let's take a look at that. Come down to layers. Here's that one frame right here. Here's the image on that. This is the mask for that right there. Okay, back over to our graphics again. And below frames, we also have graphics. These are clip art you can place on your images. Just grab this kitty cat right here, place that in. It always comes in the center. We can then take this and grab these control handles and resize that and place it anywhere you want to on your image. Put it right there. Choose OK. There's a lot of these in here. You can scroll down through a ton of these. And then below graphics, we have shapes, a lot of shapes. These are basically the same kind of shapes we looked at previously when we did that butterfly image. That's going to be in here someplace. And we also have text down here. And these are pre-built styles that are applied to text that you've already placed onto your page. So let's go back here to layers, hide that. Let's come down here and show this type layer. I'll double click on this and I'll come down and make this size larger, kind of like that, so it's easier to see. Put it right here. And now back to the graphics. We can then apply one of these. Click on the apply button right here. Just click on that, choose OK, and it has applied that style. Here's number 9 in the top 10 things you need to know when you're a beginner on Photoshop Elements, and that's adding type. We did one there already, but we'll go back and look at how it's actually done and not do it real fast. Use the type tool over here, and we have all kinds of type styles. We'll just stick with the default style, which is your regular horizontal type tool. You choose your type color right here. Let's just do something like a bright green. That should be nice. Here's your alignment, left, center, or right justified. We'll leave it at left. And you can then click on this arrow here and see all the different type styles you have on your computer. And I have several videos on YouTube about how to work with type specifically in here. We'll find something kind of fun. I'm just using the scroll wheel on my mouse to scroll up, and that's pretty nice. We'll use that one. Now on this list, we have a real large sample on the right-hand side. Now you may have a real small sample, which makes it more difficult to find the one you want. So to get that large sample, go up here to Edit, come down to Preferences, come down to Type, and right here we have Font Preview Size. Set that to huge, and you get the best view, and then choose OK. Okay, now you can kind of see it here. There's that cursor right here. Click, and that's going to be giving you a new type layer. You can see it over here, right-hand side, new type layer. And then just type in what you want to type in. Now let's type in Eagle. And there we go. There is my new text on this page. You can apply effects to these. We already saw how to do that over with graphics. You also can apply layer styles to this. And it's up here, Layer, Layer Style. Click on Style Settings. I'll just use a drop shadow. And I'll make the opacity real dark, and I'll bring the distance down a bit so you can see that better. I can adjust my angle up here. I'll move it over here to the right-hand side like that, and choose OK. And there's a nice drop shadow on that. Now, when you do these type styles, you see the FX over here, right-hand side. To bring that dialog box back up again, double-click on the FX, and here we go. We can readjust that. If I want to change what it says here, it's still a type layer. Look for that T over here. Go back to the type tool, click into the text. I can then select something in here and change that right down here in the options panel. Let's just change that to a magenta in there. There we go. I can change the whole typeface. Just select all of your text, and we'll change the typeface here to something totally different. That's kind of interesting. Green check mark, and there we go. So very easy to add text on your images. And again, these come in as a text layer. You can do these layer styles if you want to on your text. That's fine. We can come in and we can apply those graphics in here onto your text. That's just fine. If you want to do other kinds of effects, you may have to convert this into just an image layer like we've seen previously. And again, the way you do that, the first thing I would recommend is to right-click and duplicate the layer, hide your originals as safety just in case things get messed up, right-click in here and simplify. And I can now do anything I want to on that layer, except for changing what it says, changing the text. Since it's now just a picture of that text as opposed to being actual text. Okay, here's number 10 in our top 10 list of the things you need to know if you are a Photoshop Elements beginner. But stick around. I have 2 more bonuses after this section. And you're going to want to watch the bonus section 12 for sure. That's a very important one. Okay, in this tip, let's see how we save an image out of Photoshop Elements. This is something which I don't normally mention in any of my other YouTube videos, because I figure at that point, people have already learned this. Once you learn it once, you've learned it and you're set. But if you're a brand new beginner, you may not know this yet. So go up here to File. We have 3 options in here: Save, Save As, and Save for Web. Now, if you have layers over here, anything like this is going to automatically save it as a Photoshop Elements file, which is a PSD file, the same file format that the full Adobe Photoshop also uses. So I'll just choose Save. I already have mine saved once. It's just going to save that. Choose Save, and that's done. If I wanted to save it as a different file type or to a different location, I'll go up here and use File, Save As. I can now choose someplace else if I wanted to, or I can come down here and change my file type. So we'll save this one just as a bitmap. Just a few options up here. I'll leave that as is. Choose OK. That's now saved. Now notice up here in the title bar, it still says PSD. That's because the save as function doesn't change the one you're looking at. It just saves a copy of it out to that other format or that other location. Now, if you need to go to your standard web formats, which is your PNG format or the JPEG format for full color images like this, or a GIF format if you're working with graphics images, you can either save to those up here with the file and save as and choosing that option, or if you want to have more control over that, you can come down to save for web. We have two views, the original and the saved version over here. And in here, you can choose from several presets. Here's some GIF presets, JPEG presets, and PNG presets. I like PNG 24 for most images for use on the internet nowadays. It's a good format. And we can get fancy on this. I can choose to save with or without transparency up here. I can change the size down here. I can do a percentage size shift, a lot of options. Let's say I was changing in here to the JPEG format. I can choose levels of compression in here, whether or not to optimize that, blur adjustments. There's a lot of control you have in here for that if you need that level of control. Most of the time you don't. When you're happy, choose save, choose a location, and it's now saved. Okay, now time for our two bonus techniques in here. The first one, number 11 in the top 10, is how to print from Photoshop Elements. I don't normally mention this in my videos because people have already learned that. But if you're brand new, this will be brand new for you here. And stay around for the next tip, number 12. It's a very important one. Okay, go up here to File, come down to Print right here. Brings up the Print dialog box. And there's a lot of things you can do in here. We'll just go quickly over this. There's your preview window right here. This is the actual size on an 11 by 8.5 inch paper. Notice that I have all three open images showing over here. I can add or remove those. Let's say I only wanted to print this one down below. I'll click on these and I'll remove those from the print option. Click on this one and remove that. So now I have just the one image to print. I can zoom in here in the print area. Let's see, print area is locked in, but I can zoom in or out on that. The print area is locked in over here on the right-hand side. Select print size. We'll go top to bottom up here. On the top, you choose your printer, and I'm working with my Canon inkjet printer right now. You can choose your settings in here for your printer settings. I'll leave those at the default. Instead, I want to change from the rear tray to the cassette. There we go. Paper size, that's correct. Type, I can do picture package or a contact sheet in here, but these require going over to the organizer. And this will automatically open up the organizer if you want to do that. It has a slightly different print layout. You can only do individual prints here from the editor. And we'll choose our print size. Let's say I want to do an 8 by 10. It resizes the image to fit on the paper to the 8 by 10 size. If I want to come down to a 5 by 7, again, it resizes that to fit the 5 by 7 area. You can also crop to fit if it doesn't quite fit that area, just like that. And there you go. You can choose how many prints you want to make and click on print. It's then going to print that on your paper just like we have right here. Let's now do something fancy here for number 12 in our top 10 things that beginning Photoshop Elements users need to know. And that's how to remove a background from a photo. I have a lot of videos about doing just this one thing, so I'll do it fast this time and check out my YouTube channel for more advanced videos on this one topic. I'm going to hide everything in here except for the background layer. Let's just get this out of the way, get that out of the way. And I'll bring this up and I'll hide that text as well. And here this is. Now, whenever I do anything, as I mentioned before, I always make a copy. So let's right click on this and I'm going to duplicate that layer, choose OK. I'll hide that background. So what I want to do here is to remove the background, leave just the girls, and then put any background I want in there. The basic concept here is to make a selection around the girls and use that selection to make a layer mask. And that gives me that clean area in behind. Now you can use any selection tool you want to for this. Either do it the hard way, which takes a long time using the polygonal lasso tool, making a very careful selection. I use this sometimes depending upon what I need to do. Or if you have a more current version, a more recent version of Photoshop Elements, you can come up here to select and use subject. And this will usually find your foreground subject and make your selection just like we did here. Or you can use any of these tools, such as the quick selection brush, magic wand, anything like that. You just need to have a selection made. And here we go. Now, a couple things need to be fixed in here. A little spot here that wasn't grabbed. So I'll use my lasso tool, regular lasso tool here. I'm going to click on add. And I'll just go around that and add that piece into my selection. That fixes that. And I want to clean the edges up here around the hair. Everything else is okay. I just want to fix those hair sections. So I'll come down to Refine Edge. Brings up the Refine Edge dialog box. I like to use this setting at Overlay, which is right here, kind of a red overlay. And there's the brush size. See it up here. That's at 35. You can adjust it right down there. And that's pretty good. Now, all you do is you just brush over the area you want Photoshop Elements to go in and do a better job of, and it goes in and really carefully checks that edge and makes a real tight selection right along that edge. You normally don't need to do this if your edge is already pretty hard, but it's very useful along softer edges like hair and sweaters, animal fur, things like that. If you want to put some back in again, you can do that also with the erase tool right here. But also go around and just pull this out right in there just for the hair section. We can double check that over here. Let's change this to on white. It's a little messy up here, but we can clean that up. Here it is on black. Okay, most of that is actual hair, so that's fine. Go back to overlay. Now the best way to clean up little spots like this is to come down here and just increase the contrast a bit. I found that up between 15 and 20 is usually very good. So I'll put this at 20. You can soften your edge up a little bit if you want to by adding in a smart radius of just 1 pixel. This will soften the edge out. This is where I normally set these. Come down here to output. We can choose to output to a layer mask here, which will be on my current layer. Or you can even make a new layer with your layer mask right here. I'll do that one. Choose OK. There's my new layer with a layer mask. It hides the layer that I was on, and I'm now showing whatever I have down below that. Let's just hide that. There's our transparency. Here's our new background. I want to fix this one spot right up in here, which I wasn't happy with. Double click on the layer mask side. We're going to darken that down. Layer mask, black hides, white shows, and there's going to be some softness along this edge. So go over here to this tool. If you don't see that, click on that spot, come down to the options. That's the burn tool right here. I meant it for midtones, and it's at an exposure of 50%, and then just brush over that area, and it should make that more contrasty, and that's going to tighten up that area for us. Okay, if you like this video, hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. Click on that subscribe button, hit that bell icon so you get notifications of all my new videos. If you want more training here for Photoshop Elements, take a look at my complete training course for Photoshop Elements. I have a link for that right down there in the description, and I'll see you next time.